Hello, welcome to the Salary Negotiation Workshop offered by Cal State Fullerton's Career Center featuring Elizabeth Zavala Sevis, Associate Director of the Career Center, and Ken Martin.
Hi there, I'm the Regional Talent Acquisition Manager for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I've been with the company 23 years and I've been recruiting for 16 years. So I've had quite a lot of experience in interviewing. I interview about 40 people a month. And certainly salary negotiation is one of the tasks that we talk about during the interviews, and I hope to bring some of that expertise to you today.
Great. We think salary negotiation is an important topic for students here at Cal State Fullerton and recent graduates because oftentimes students feel that they don't have the right to negotiate or they should not be asking because it is their first professional job. But we're here to teach you some basic tips to think about as you think about job searching and when being offered a position. The reality is that only about 18% of individuals negotiate. And this is very telling that many feel intimidated or perhaps they don't have the necessary knowledge or experience to ask for some negotiation in salary. In addition, when we look at statistics, men earn more money than women, and oftentimes men are 8 times more likely than women to negotiate their starting salary and benefits. So we're going to talk about why is it important to negotiate and the importance of your starting salary. It's important to negotiate because once you accept a position, it might be difficult to increase your salary depending on the type of industry that you're going to be working in. In addition, employers base annual wages on starting salary. Therefore, if you start an industry at the lower range of a salary, it might be difficult to increase your next salary at your next position or at the next level. And even so, it might be even more difficult if you're growing within an organization. In addition, it's important to think about your starting salary because on average, when you think about benefits and annual salary and taxes, it's often true that about 20 to 30% of your salary is going to go towards benefits and taxes. So really you need to think about how much money you're actually bringing home from that monthly salary. And when we think about annual salary increases, in some industries it's very common practice that you do have annual salary increases, but in other industries that may not be the case. So you need to be informed about what type of industry you're going into and where you might expect to have annual salary increases. But even when we talk about salary increases, we're really only talking about 3 to 5% or 3 to 6% on average is a common trend for a salary increase. And even with a promotion, it's typically, it might be 10% or a little bit more than 10%, but salary increases usually range about 3 to 6% in an organization.
So as you're learning how to negotiate, there's a few things you need to know the basics on. Timing is everything. You definitely do not want to talk about salary as your first question in the interview. In fact, the rule of thumb is really not to talk about salary at all during the interview process until it's brought up by an employer. You need to do your research. You need to know what the position is and what current positions pay in your area. We're going to give you some resources for that. You also need to know what type of position. If you're in a sales position, for example, a lot of your salary is based on your performance, and you may earn commission as straight commission, or you might earn commission plus an hourly wage. Every company differs. At Enterprise, we have a great starting salary, but that is the salary. There isn't any negotiating because it is a sales position. You have an opportunity to earn more as you perform, and that's really the ideal situation for our company because you can certainly earn quite a bit of money as you continue to perform. You definitely need to know your worth. I think sometimes I see students or new grads come in to interviews and they expect to be making $100,000 a year right out of college, and really that's not a very realistic expectation. So you need to know what you're worth. You need to know what skills you present. You're always going to want to evaluate the offer. Most companies, you'll have some time to consider that offer in writing or over the phone, and you're going to look at it as well as making sure that you understand the entire package, including benefits. Don't undersell yourself or ask for a range that is unrealistic for an employer to afford you. So again, you don't want to undersell yourself where your employer is not going to give you a higher salary, but you also don't want to ask for too high of a salary range because you may be asking yourself out of a job. And then you're also going to need to know when to walk away. You may find that this starting pay they're offering you is not what you can afford, or what that you feel that you're worth, and there may be another opportunity out there for you. So those are the tricky parts about negotiating. So we hope we can shed some light on it for you during this webinar.
In addition, if I may add, another important aspect of negotiating and knowing, what to ask for and et cetera, when we talk about some scenarios, is to be honest throughout the process, because employers can check, background checks and references can validate salary information, and it's really up to your current or past employers to share as much information as they possibly can, as it relates to salary. So make sure that you are honest at all times during the process.
Absolutely. So when we talk about salary, there's certain questions you may be asked that you may not feel comfortable answering or know how to answer. So as Liz mentioned, you always want to be honest. You can always provide a broad range. So an example of a question might be, the employer asked what I was currently making in my last position. You definitely want to be honest. You definitely want to share what you've been asked. Don't worry if you've been in a minimum wage job. If you say I made, this much per hour, we realize, employers do, that this is maybe your first or second job out of college, and it is a professional position. So don't think if you've been paid minimum wage that they're only going to pay you minimum wage, because obviously if the position is a higher caliber of a position, you're going to make what the going rate is, or a competitive salary for that. So don't be afraid to share if you've been making minimum wage, but you definitely want to be honest. What if they want to know how much money I want to make? And that's where you really need to do your research. We're going to give you some tools to find out what that position particularly pays in the area that you live in, and a similar or like position. So a lot of times you can give a range versus a specific salary, and that kind of keeps you in a safe zone where you're not going to be asking for too much, but you're also going to be realistic, where they know what you are expecting to make based on the skill set and what the job entails and offers. What if an employer offers a salary range that is below my salary range? Well, that's something that we can discuss at how do you negotiate. There are some companies that want you to negotiate. They allow you to negotiate, and it shows your interest, and it gives you the opportunity to sell yourself. So that's when your research comes in, and that's when you're going to ask about a higher salary based on your skill set and selling your ability, not based on what you need to have to survive. If you decide not to take the position because the salary is too low, that's okay. We have that happen sometimes. And it's important that you've thought about the whole package before you make that decision. And also still let them know you're interested in the position. Do it very kindly. Don't be rude about it. This isn't enough pay, that sort of thing, because you never know when you're going to cross that employer again. And who knows, that may be a company you might want to research in the future. So just gracefully declining. You never know. They might even come back with a counter offer if they want you that badly.
And then if I may add also some strategies that we have listed in our career guide. We have several examples in our salary negotiation chapter in our career guide. I encourage you to pick up a free copy. But in addition, as Kim mentioned, if an employer asks you currently how much you're making, you want to be honest, and you can give them exact figures or more or less a broad range, and say roughly I was compensated at this rate, or made about close to $30,000, or I was contracting at $15 an hour, or it was a stipend, it was a summer job. Be honest. And as in regards to, if they ask you, well, Kim, how much did you want to make in this position? That really opens up the door for the salary question and negotiation. And as we mentioned, hopefully you've done your research. And some situations, some jobs might have a range, and you could say, Kim, I noticed that the job description had a range of $50,000 to $55,000 a year. My salary requirements are, well aligned with what you're offering. You may have a better understanding of, what your company has budgeted for this position. What did you have in mind? You can always divert back the question to the employer and say, I'm really interested in this position, and I'm sure you're going to offer something that's fair and comparable to the experience that I bring to this position. Can you give me a better idea of what you had budgeted for this position? So that's another way of talking salary without really pinpointing a range. Or you could say something like, Kim, well, in doing my research and understanding that the job requires these skills and experiences that I bring to the table and prefer someone with a bachelor's degree in finance, I was thinking that, something closer to the ongoing rate of, mid 50s is my salary requirement, and see what the employer has to say. And in addition, if the employer offers a salary range that is below your salary range and offers you 50 and you really wanted 55 or 56 or something closer to the mid 50s, you could say, well, that's, I actually wanted to know, is there some room for negotiation? Does your budget allow for some room for negotiation? And then Kim might say, well, what did you have in mind? And then you validate based on your worth, which we're going to talk about a little bit more, and the research that you've done, and say, well, based on my understanding of the job responsibilities and similar jobs in the industries, I was looking for something closer to the mid 50s. Does your budget allow that? And then just kind of see what, and wait to see what the employer says.
It's a little bit of a chess game.
Yes.
So, and it's okay to pause. Sometimes I think people are too eager to put out an amount and not give the employer an opportunity to respond. You may be shooting yourself in the foot by just spitting out the numbers you're looking for. So give them a chance to respond when you ask those questions. And you never know, they might give you more than you're asking for.
And also, as Kim mentioned, it's good to pause, and it's also, as we talk about evaluating the offer, it's good to say, I'm really excited about this opportunity. I really want to take some time to evaluate the offer. When can I get back to you? And understanding that the employer might, give you a time frame that might be a short window of time or a little bit of a bigger window of time depending on their needs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, as we mentioned, it's important to do your research, and why it's important to do your research is because you don't want to go into the interview blindfolded. You can't assume that the salary question is not going to come up. Employers have various ways of recruiting candidates, and the salary question might come up at a phone screening. It might come up in the first initial interview. It might come up in the second interview. It might come up as they're getting closer to make you an offer. But you want to make sure that you are prepared so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot for asking for too little or pretty much asking for too much that, doesn't allow an employer to afford you. So you want to make sure you do your research ahead of time. And with doing your research, you want to know the industry standards for that, position that you're interviewing for, applying for. Understand if it's an entry-level position, if it's a mid-entry level position or a high-level position, and understanding where you are in that range. Some of these websites we have listed here are websites that you can find, like Own It Online, Salary.com, Salary Expert. Eureka and Ferguson's Career Guidance Center are resources that we have at here at Cal State Fullerton that are accessible to you on a 24/7 basis. They're online on our website, and these resources are great. Ferguson is a national database that will provide you salary information that's nationwide for various industries. Eureka is California-based, and it's a great tool to utilize because it'll break down to you a description of a position, and it'll give you the entry level, the mid-level, and the high pay for that industry so that you have an idea based on your experience, your qualifications, and what the job requires, where you are in that range. So we definitely encourage you to do this before you go into an interview. In addition, as you're doing your research and you're comparing yourself to these entry-level positions and looking at where do I stand in this range, it's really important that you know your worth. And it's important that you know your worth because the more you know about what your worth and your assets are and how you meet the expectations of that job that you're applying for, you're going to be at an advantage to show an employer and demonstrate your value. And this is why we stress it's important for you to first sell yourself to an employer so that then you have more an advantage to negotiate a salary if a salary is permissible to negotiate in your industry. So make sure that number one, you exude confidence, that you have a positive attitude when you're talking to an employer through the interview process and also in the negotiation stage of that process. You demonstrate your value and how you do in that interview by showcasing the experience that you have, by showcasing great examples and how you'll be a valuable employee and asset to that organization. It's best to postpone salary talk until an employer has opened up that door to talk about salary. So again, at any given point, an employer might just ask you point blank, what do you want to make, or how much were you expecting to make in this position? You also want to make sure that you take some notes during a salary negotiation if you have to. Most of the time, these negotiations happen over phone or sometimes in person. We absolutely, one of the tips that Kim's going to talk about is to never discuss it via email if possible. Um, Obviously, request additional time to decide for an offer. Employers want you at 100, 110%. They don't want you at 90%. So make sure that you're making an informed decision and that you evaluate the entire package before you accept or decline a position. And if needed, you can always ask for a salary proposal in writing before you accept a position. During this process, just as we stated, it's important for you to showcase professionalism through the interview process. It's crucial that you showcase your professionalism, your enthusiasm, and the fact that you've done your research and you know your worth in the salary negotiation process as well, and that you utilize confidence, optimism, and professionalism. Those are key things that you want to do during this process. And avoid certain phrases like I need, I want, I need a commute, therefore I need more money, I need to pay my school loans, or, so you want to use words that are inclusive and say, strongly believe that we can work together and I can make an immediate contribution to your organization and help us move forward in reaching our goals. As I think about the salary, I would need a little bit more time to make an informed decision. So you can use those types of words to make sure that you're engaging in the conversation and also thinking about the employer needs and your needs as well. So that's going to be part of knowing your worth and understanding what you bring to the table and how much you can negotiate.
All right. So when you're evaluating the offer, one of the things we didn't mention earlier in your research is that some salaries are not negotiable. So if you're looking for a government position, perhaps you're in the educational setting, or you have a grant-funded position, there may be just a certain amount of money earmarked for that position. So, and oftentimes it's disclosed in the job description too. So you may not be able to negotiate, but what can be negotiated is perhaps a reclassification with new duties. Maybe your skill set, if you have a master's degree versus a bachelor's degree, might bring you more money that way. So that's just something to keep in mind. But when you're evaluating the offer, it's important that you figure out what you can afford. As we mentioned earlier, it's the whole package. It's not just the salary or the position that they're offering the salary for. It's also benefits. That's huge. I know at Enterprise we offer great benefits. Our healthcare is phenomenal. We pay very little out of pocket for that. We have 401k. We have matching and profit sharing. We have great vacation time. That's something that's very valuable. So those are the things you want to look at when you're looking at the overall package. And our folks get a company car once they're a manager. So there's a lot of things that are important. You want to look at the nature of the work. You want to look at the structure of the company, the level of autonomy. And this is going back to knowing yourself and knowing what you're looking for. Do you want to travel? Do you not want to travel? People who love to travel, that they might find that attractive. Perhaps the salary is a little bit lower, but they'll get all expense paid travel of the course and scope of their job, and that may be something that they're interested in. Find out if they need to relocate you. Usually companies have very good relocation packages, and that certainly is worth money as well. The training, the lifestyle, is it a work from home position? Is it working in the office? Is it a combination of two? Your retirement, like we talked about, 401k, and then how often will you get raises? That's perfectly acceptable to ask that question. When will my performance be reviewed? Is that tied to a pay raise? How do pay raises work? That sort of thing. So you can get an idea of where you could be. If perhaps you're accepting something that might be a little lower to start, you may find that in the long run, that's a great opportunity for you to accept. And the stability of the company, that's very important. Is it a startup versus a company that's been around a long time and has a great track record for retention of employees? Are the employees satisfied? Glassdoor and some of these other sites can give you some information about the employer that you're interviewing with. Keep in mind that all employees log into that, and there may be some employees that may not be as satisfied because perhaps it wasn't the best position for them. So I do want you to look at that with a grain of salt, but also you can see in general, what is the general consensus of that company? Are people happy there? Are they getting great salaries? Are they getting promotion opportunities? So those are the things that you can look for as you move on. So negotiation. Is it too little? Did I negotiate too high? That's the tricky part of it. We've given you some tips on how to answer those salary questions during the interview. But first, you have to assess if you can afford the job. We talked about that. If you're transitioning into careers, sometimes you know, you may have been looking for a long time and this is the position. It may not be the number one best position you're looking for, but you may need to take that position for your personal life, and it may be a position that can turn into, you know, a better one for you. Or perhaps there's another company down the road you might want to work for, and maybe you can build your skill set up while you're at that company. I mean, companies certainly are looking for people that want to stay, but I know some industries you do need to kind of do that a little bit to build your salary. But I do caution you, if you're evaluating an offer, it's important to ask them, can I go ahead and take some time to review it? How much time would be reasonable? And then when you make a decision, we really want you to make an informed, confirmed decision. You know, if you accept a position and then renege later, that can be a little difficult. So you want to be sure when you do accept that you're absolutely ready to accept that position. And if there is room for negotiation, you can ask and try to negotiate and look at the entire packet. So for example, I think Liz mentioned this earlier, I'm very excited about being a part of this, but my research on the salary is about $55,000. I understand your budget's $50,000. Is there room to negotiate? So you want to be sure that you use those tips as you're doing that. Now, we talked about walking away from an offer. You know, this is a great little cartoon. They're obviously very far apart in their salary. Sometimes you can negotiate a little closer, and again, it's okay to walk away. And you can tell the employer, I understand your salary limitations, and I believe it would be unfair for both of us if I were to accept this position. I'd like to stress that I think we would work very well together. I'm very interested in being a part of your company. If another position were to become available that matches my salary more, or if this position you happen to have more room with the salary, I'd be more than willing to look at it again, because I certainly want to keep the door open. So that's a good way that you can try to walk away gracefully.
Perfect, thank you. And as we kind of conclude this webinar, just to kind of in conclusion, it's absolutely crucial that you do your research and know your worth and understand what might be a suitable salary to request at entry level, considering your years of experience, your education, your experience, any type of certification, specialized skills, language skills you may have. And those are all part of knowing your worth and understanding what you can offer to an employer. It's also important to know that timing is key. As we stated, it's important for you to wait for the employer to bring up the salary question and understand that they're opening that door for you to have that discussion. So it's crucial that you do not bring up the salary question on your own too early on in the process, because you may have not had the opportunity to sell your worth and therefore may not have an advantage as far as how much you can get from a salary perspective. It's also crucial, as we expect that you exude confidence and professionalism in the interview process. Part of being successful in negotiating your salary is to also exude that confidence and professionalism, and more than anything, know your worth so that you can quantify and provide some tangibles as to why you're asking for a little bit more than the starting salary or what they're offering. As you think about an offer, it's really important that you evaluate the entire offer and understand, is this a really great opportunity, even though it might be $2,000 shy of what I really wanted. So it's understandable to really understand what you can afford to take. As we talked about, a yearly salary comes down to a monthly salary, and then from that you need to think about taxes and benefits and how much you're really bringing home. It's important to think about these strategies, these coaching strategies, and to practice your pitch for asking for a little bit more for money. The worst that can happen is that they say no, but at least you tried, and you want to make sure that you create a win-win situation for both you and the employer, because at the end of the day, if you, as you're talking to an employer and you have that conversation, as I think this will be a great opportunity for both of us. I think I can do great in this organization. I can see ourselves growing together and working together and reaching the goals that you stated. It becomes a win-win situation for both you and the organization, as opposed to these are the needs these are my needs and this is how I need to be compensated. So you want to be professional to create a win-win situation. Know when to accept a great offer, and again, know how to decline an offer. You never know where that person's going to be next. And you want to make sure that you do not burn any bridges in the process. It's really important that you think about these things as you're negotiating a salary, and also understanding where when you're asking for a little bit for too much of an increase. And I think generally speaking, it will depend on the industry as we talked about. We really encourage you to come into the Career Center and get some information and coaching on this process. We have college career specialists that can help you navigate through the various industries and understand where it's appropriate to negotiate and what industries it's not appropriate to negotiate. We thank you for the time, and we hope that these tips will assist you and facilitate that salary negotiation process for you so that it can create a win-win situation for you as well.
Yes.